This is the Altitude Daily Podcast. Everything you can't miss from today on Altitude Sports Radio. Mosher, Lombardi, and Kane.
And I understand the nature of the hierarchy within an organization. The owner has total control. The GM shops for the groceries. The coach uses the groceries, right? But when you're the fourth longest tenured coach in the league, the only coaches who have been in the same spot longer than Michael Malone are Greg Popovich in San Antonio, Eric Spoelstra in Miami, Steve Kerr in Golden State. And Steve Kerr beats him by a year. You'd feel like he has some power. And when he says something like, that's not my job, that's for Calvin to decide.
But you're not looking at this the way I look at it.
Okay, go ahead.
Michael Malone has power. It's called playing time. He has plenty of power. If he thinks you can help the team win, you're going to play. If he doesn't think you're going to help the team win, you're not going to play. He's given the bag of groceries, and he's told, cook something up. If this ingredient doesn't work, it's going to sit to the side. And then it's up to the GM to work on that.
But
the coach simply says, okay, here's what I got to work with. Here's what I'm going to work. I'm going to sizzle with this.
Here's what I'm getting at, though. The coach has a certain way that he wants to run a team, and the GM has to work in tandem with the coach.
Yeah.
And I would think that whether Michael Porter Jr. is on or off the team is not completely outside of the control of Michael Malone, too. That
Sure.
He is, powerless to what Calvin Booth wants to construct.
Of course he's going to have a voice in the matter, but he's coaching a team this week. He's got 3 games in 4 days.
Yeah.
He's got 4 games in 6 days. That's a lot of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
If you think he's huddled up in the corner somewhere talking about putting another roster together or who goes and who stays, I'm sure they lend a voice here and there, but that's not his job.
Well, I think he's got time for a 30-minute conversation.
Sure.
I'm like, we're going to trade your third max player on this team. Yeah.
But do you think if whoever makes those decisions upstairs makes the decision, do you think Michael Malone's the coach with enough power to veto it? No, I don't know how it works. I'm not sure if that's the case.
Gosh, I would think you'd be pretty close.
Those are discussions, not vetoes.
The Altitude Daily. The Morning Sprint.
I would utilize Casey Mittelstadt's contract to try and go out and get Seth Jones from Chicago, because you would have to move money out to get Jones back in. And Chicago still has 1 slot remaining for salary retention. They've used 2 of their 3 spots. You can only have 3 retained contracts on your team at one time. If you were to utilize Casey Mittelstadt and say a prospect, either Cal Ritchie, Mikhail Gulyayev, maybe Ilya Nabokov, or Mittelstadt and a pick, let's call it a second-round pick that has a condition to be a first if the Avs win the West this year. I think you could get Chicago to retain a certain percentage of Seth Jones' salary, which is $9.5 million.
Seth Jones, son of Popeye Jones.
Son of Popeye Jones.
I just ran into Popeye Jones at a coffee shop about 2 hours ago.
Son of Popeye.
Pretty awesome.
Learned how to play hockey here in Colorado. I think you could make that happen. And I would use Casey's contract to go and get that done.
The Morning Sprint.
But yeah, I don't think anything's up. I would not. Jon Gruden's not coming to.
Why not?
To the Denver Broncos.
Why not? Come be my passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and we'll also give you another title in the front office. Player personnel guy.
So be Johnny Morton, who just took over as the Detroit Lions, and David Shaw combined.
Yeah. Why not?
Which ironically, both those guys come from the Jon Gruden tree.
Why not? He's known to have a really good rapport with young quarterbacks. I think it's a decent idea. I don't think it's that crazy.
I would love it, Raj, but do you think there is enough oxygen in Dove Valley for that much ego combination between 2 individuals?
I do, because
Sean
it's so funny.
Payton and Jon Gruden's ego in one building?
The question is, though, Gruden's been out of the coaching game now, and I think he realizes that the head coach, his time as a head coach is done. right? He wouldn't have gone from ESPN to the Raiders and then gotten fired and then gone to Barstool without staying like very much involved in the NFL game if he wanted to be a head coach. I think he's kind of swallowed that. I think he just wants to be a personality.
Hey, Sean, listen. Coach Gru in the Mile High City. Can you imagine that?
The Altitude Daily. Columbus, Hastings, and DMAC.
Must-haves.
So my formula a couple days ago, I think, fits in very closely to what Sean Payton's formula appears to be. I said my offseason, here's what I would do. I would get a running back in free agency. I would draft a running back. I would get a tight end in free agency. I would draft a tight end. And then I would draft a wide receiver. After that, you're done. You've met your needs. You've met your wants. No. You bet your must-haves, you bet your needs, and now you get to move on to whatever your wants are. Offensive line, you're set, man. I think you could run it back with everybody you got, including your backups. I even like the backups you got. So give me 2 tight ends, give me 2 running backs, give me 1 wide receiver. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I don't care.
To me, the Joker thing is the biggest thing. And listen, I wanted T. Higgins. But they ain't going in that direction because later on he talks about how much he really does like the receivers and speaks well of Vele.
Yeah. You know what? This Joker thing's stupid.
Well, okay, but it's his thing.
Well, it's like saying, I want a blue Mercedes. And all of a sudden you get a red one. No, I want a blue. You've got a red Mercedes. It's Mercedes.
Hey, man.
I want a blue.
So here's my fear.
He's obsessed by it.
Here's my fear to what you're saying there with the Joker thing. I hope he's not as hung up on that as he is talking publicly, because I think it's a dangerous game to play when you try to draft a player that's really good at multiple positions. Because it's I'm not saying it's easy, but it's far easier to draft a player that's damn good at a position than trying to find the unicorn that could do everything really, really well. I think it's dangerous to overemphasize the Joker role. I think you sometimes you just got to get lucky and you fall into it when you draft an incredible football player.
Listen, however we feel about it, it's pretty clear how Sean Payton feels about it. And he did mention later on that, quote, inside linebacker. So if I'm looking at one guy in free agency right now, it's Zach Bond from the Eagles at inside linebacker if they're going to spend a couple of bucks. And they do have a couple bucks to spend.
I wouldn't hate Zach, but my guy's Dre Greenlaw.
Well, okay, but all right. How about this? How about, it's not even a coffee bet. I just bet you. If the Broncos spend a couple of bucks.
Second phone, be careful, Tyler.
It will not be.
Second phone conversation.
It will not be on a receiver. It won't even be on a tight end, but I like Gesicki too.
The Altitude Daily. Columbus, Hastings, and DMAC.
So Bennett Durando of the Denver Post had written about this very thing. Okay. Can the Nuggets sign a player off the buyout market? Yes, but they would have to clear a roster spot. And depending on the buyout target, they would also have to shed more than $5.6 million in salary, hypothetically. Apron teams, the Nuggets being in the first apron currently, are not allowed to sign a player who's been bought out if his previous salary exceeded the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is $12.8 million this season.
Okay.
As a for instance, stay with me.
I'm trying to. There's a lot of math.
I'm confused. Bruce Brown. Okay, let's just use Bruce Brown as an example. Everybody loves Brucey B. His cap hit this season is $23 million. If Toronto buys him out, the Nuggets can attempt to sign him only if they get below the first apron ahead of time, which would essentially require them to find a team that will accept Zeke Naji and the 2031 pick in a salary dump trade this week. Otherwise, Denver could waive a young player and pursue a veteran minimum candidate from the bargain bin.
Okay, so that's important to note, folks, because this came in. We got after the fact, everybody kept saying, I can't believe they didn't sign anybody. They could not.
Yeah.
And so unless they can clear Zeke Naji, let's all keep this in our minds when Bruce inevitably gets bought out. Unless they get Zeke Naji moved, then there's no chance for them to even think about a Bruce Brown.
So, and I know people will hear that and they will wonder, why are we talking about a draft pick in 2031? A year that Kyle Shanahan is not even confident we will all live to.
None of us should be at this point.
So, you have to have a first-round pick one every 2 drafts. There is a rule that says you have to hold a future first-round pick in at least every 2 drafts. So, the Nuggets have their 26, 28, and 30 firsts, all right? Because they have already traded their 2025 first-rounder and their 2027 first-rounder, as well as their 29 first-rounder. They've already moved all those. So they have no draft picks to trade until 2031.
See, I tell people all the time. We had a texter yesterday asking me these questions, and I tried to tell him, yeah, I feel like I learned something every week about the damn NBA rules that I did not know before. I did not realize player acquisition and firing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I did not realize that player movement was as complicated as this sucker is.
Extremely.
You've been listening to the Altitude Daily. Catch us live weekdays on 92.5 FM, the Altitude Sports Radio app, twitch.tv/AltitudeSR, youtube.com @Altitude Sports Radio, and your favorite smart speaker. Say Altitude Sports Radio.